accelerated her movement into Central Command, and I'll just leave it at that.
So just to be clear, the message to Iran right now is if you launch another major attack, the U.S. and its allies will shoot down these missiles and drones. That's the message.
I don't think we've actually been delicate in our messaging to Iran. We've been very clear that if Israel is attacked, we will come to the defense of Israel. You saw us do that on April 13th. I'm kind of paraphrasing what you're saying there. We will do that again. Should Israel be attacked, we absolutely will come to Israel's defense.
Does part of that defense of Israel also include potential strikes inside Iran?
Yeah, so I'm just not going to go into any hypotheticals, Lucas, but I appreciate the question. Jeannie.
Thank you, Sabrina. Two questions, excuse me, two questions on Russia, Iran, and North Korea. Former Russian Defense Minister Sergei Shoigu recently visited Iran and promised missile support to Iran. Normally, Iran provides Russia with weapons to be used in the war in Ukraine. Will this affect the war between Israel and Iran and Hamas?
So just making sure that I understand your question, Jane, you're asking about a visit by Shoigu to Iran and how that could impact the Middle East?
Yes.
So I can't speculate on that visit. I would say that I think separately, we've seen a deepening cooperation and relationship between Russia and Iran as Russia continues to engage in its unlawful war in Ukraine. So, we've seen that deepening partnership. We've seen Russia continue to seek weapons out from Iran. While I can't speculate on what this visit entails, we've seen these visits of leaders happen over the course of the last 2 years. In terms of how this plays, into the Middle East, look, Iran has a choice. I think we've been very clear on our messaging when it comes to the defense of Israel. We are going to stand in the defense of Israel just as we did, on April 13th. But I'm just not going to speculate out onto anything else.
But North Korea is providing weapons to Hamas. And do you think Israel will be threatened if the arms trade between Iran and North Korea continues?
Well, look, I think Hamas certainly has a network of being able to be financed by Iran. I mean, these are, Iran proxy groups engaging in acts that we saw happen on October 7th. Israel has a right to continue to go after Hamas, and that's what they're doing in Gaza. I haven't seen some of these reports that you've referenced, so I'm just going to leave it at that. Lilith, nice to see you back in the briefing room.
I wanted to ask you one question about Bangladesh. Has the Pentagon ever sought access to the one Bangladeshi island called San Martin Island in Bay of Bengal to have some military footprint over there?
I have to refer you to Indo-PACOM and Central Command more on that. I just don't have more for you on that.
And secondly, during this visit of India's Defense Minister Rajnath Singh next week, what were the main topics or issues which the Defense Secretary Austin wants to raise with the Indians?
Yeah, so thanks for bringing that up. Of course, we're looking forward to a visit, but I just don't have more for you right now. I'm not going to get ahead of the Secretary or any meetings that he's doing. As always, we will have a readout of his meeting, but I just don't have more to provide on the front end, but we will on the back end, as we always do.
And the next 6 months of this administration, what are the things that Secretary wants to accomplish on the India-U.S. defense front?
I think there's many things that the Secretary has laid out at the beginning of his tenure that include always, following the NDS. That is our North Star. So our relationships with the Indo-Pacific, meeting our pacing challenge with the PRC, that, of course, is in cooperation with our partner, India. And the Secretary is coming off of his 11th visit to the Indo-Pacific. We've hosted, his Indian counterpart here at the State Department, at the White House as well. So the relationship with India remains one of great importance. It's one of great importance to the Indo-Pacific as well. And, as you mentioned, there's a visit coming up, and when we have more to share on that, we certainly will.
Thank you.
Yeah. Yeah, I'll stop. Yep.
Thank you. So, I have a couple on Ukraine. So
Sure.
Ukraine is asking for permission to use Western weapons for longer-range strikes inside Russia to build momentum during its Kursk operation. Is this something that the United States is considering?
So I don't have anything more to provide on long-range deep strike capabilities. We have given them, capabilities and sort of worked with the Ukrainians on setting those parameters, but those haven't changed.
Why is this still considered to be escalatory, given that there has been no major response from the Russians to the incursion of Ukrainians into their territory? I mean, it seems like that every red line that Russia draws, Ukrainian military is erasing now.
We can have a very long conversation about this. I will tell you that the weapons that we are providing them, and not just, you have to remember, this is not just the United States. This is a coalition of countries coming together through the UDCG, providing weapons and capabilities and support to Ukraine. We believe the best way that they can be effective on the battlefield is by knitting those capabilities together and continuing to push forces back to regain their sovereign territory. That doesn't necessarily happen by doing long-range deep strikes within Russia. And of course, we're worried about escalation. So just because Russia hasn't responded to something doesn't mean that they can't or won't in the future. And that's something that the administration is always weighing. But you have to remember that what Ukraine has been able to do with some of the whether it's from us or other countries, they've been very successful in being able to take back their sovereign territory, and they still continue to do it. This is not something that's going to end in a day, although it could if Putin decided to withdraw his troops from Russia. But certainly Ukraine, it's going to take time. It's taking training. And what I will tell you is what you know, is that our commitment is with Ukraine for the long haul. I'll just leave it at that. Yes.
Thank you so much for the opportunity. Couple weeks back, White House Middle East advisor-led delegation visited Saudi Arabia along with Pentagon and State Department officials, held talks there, and just last week we have seen that U.S. lifted ban on Saudi Arabia from offensive air to ground mutations. So question is this part of ongoing Saudi Arabia, U.S. and Israel trilateral deal in the context of Saudi Arabia and Israel normalization?
Yeah, so we put out a statement on that from the State Department or from the White House. I would refer you them to speak more to that. That has to do with FMS sales, so I just would refer you to them.
And secondly, Saudi Crown Prince just suggests some Congress people that he's at the risk of being assassinated because of normalization talks with Israel. So he's armed forces chief in Saudi Arabia. He's the man who is directly engaged with United States and maybe indirect channel with the Israel as well. So how concerning it is for the United States?
I haven't seen those reports, so I just can't offer a comment on that at this time.
Thank you.
Yeah, over here.
Yeah, thank you, Sabrina. Yesterday, State Department's deputy spokesperson told me at no point the U.S. government did discuss the U.S. military withdrawal in Iraq. And soon after these comments, the Iraqi Foreign Ministry issued a statement, and they said there are no U.S. forces in Iraq except for military advisor under the umbrella of the international coalition. And these advisors there's discussion to terminate these advisors in Iraq. Could you tell me, do you have any U.S. forces, troops in Iraq?
So, as you know, we have forces in Iraq, and we have forces in Syria, and those forces are there to, or they're committed there to ensure the defeat of ISIS. And we work with the Iraqi security forces to do that. You know that. You've asked me about it before. So I'm not sure where the disconnect is here. If you're asking about the Higher Military Commission, those talks continue and are ongoing. And they are continuing, and you've seen us do readouts of every time those talks happen here or whether it's in Iraq, but I don't have an update on where those stand right now.
And the things that the Iraqi government says that there is no U.S. forces, they are advisors. What's the difference between the U.S. troops, forces in Iraq and the advisors?
So I haven't seen those comments, so I'm not going to directly comment on that. But as you know, because we've talked about this before, we do have forces in Iraq that actually have been attacked before, which you've also asked me about. And so their mission there is to ensure the defeat of ISIS. And we work with the Iraqi security forces to do just that. So while you're referencing someone's comments, I just haven't seen them, so I just don't have more to share on that. Charlie.
Thank you, Sabrina. With the Abe Lincoln headed
Yeah.
to the vicinity at haste, this has been repeated, it still won't be there for a number of days, so it'll be irrelevant if Iran or Hezbollah were to strike. Is the plan, the strategy to have two carrier strike groups in the vicinity at the same time and maybe have an overlap of the Roosevelt?
So I'm not going to speak to timelines or how long one carrier will remain in the region and the other will depart right now. What I can tell you is, the secretary directed the Lincoln to accelerate towards the Central Command area of responsibility. And while I'm not going to engage in hypotheticals, we believe that we are postured in a way that should we need to come to the defense of Israel, even if the Lincoln is not there, we would be able to do so with the carrier that we have there, which is the TR, and other destroyers that we've moved closer to Israel should we need to come to their defense.
But it still doesn't answer the question why. Why speed up? What's the rush?
Look, I mean, as you know, the TR, when the TR was initially moved into the Central Command area of responsibility, she was eventually going to leave. We were going to have another carrier come in and backfill. We accelerated the Abe's movement to the region because we know tensions are high right now and we want to see them de-escalate. These are all defensive moves. They do send a message of de-escalation. They send a message of power as well, that we will come to the defense of Israel should we need to. And that's why you've seen, it's not just the carrier. You've seen us move also a squadron of F-22s there as well. You've seen us move destroyers closer to Israel. This is all done to send a message of deterrence. And I'll leave it at that.
Give us an update on the USS Georgia.
The latest update that I have is that she's not in the Central Command area of responsibility right now. Not yet. Yes.
Thank you, madam. Two questions, please. One, unrest in Bangladesh still continues. As far as U.S. military is concerned, have they ever, if Bangladeshi military have ever asked any help from the U.S. military in those arrests, or before or now?
Not to my knowledge. We have not received a request for assistance, but also that I can't speak for State Department, so I'd refer you to the state to speak more to that.
And second, madam, today is India's 77th Independence Day. And yesterday, India shown to the world military might on the streets of Delhi, and including Defense Minister Mr. Rajnath Singh, that like Lalitha is coming this week in Washington, was also there. My question is, as far as U.S.-India military-to-military relations are concerned, this will be his first visit in Washington at the Pentagon after a long, long time, and now third term of Prime Minister Modi. And this will be visit first time after Prime Minister Modi visited Moscow, military-to-military relation between India and Russia. So how the military-to-military relations now will be India and U.S. and now India and Russia?
We still have great military relationships between our two countries. The secretary, visited India on one of his trips to the Indo-Pacific, as I told Lalith earlier. But, India is an important partner when it comes to the Indo-Pacific. And much of the NDS that continues to guide this department is focused on the Indo-Pacific and our pacing challenge of China. And India has shown to be a great partner in that. So our mil-to-mil relationship is strong. Ahead of a visit, I'm not gonna get ahead of that. We will always have a readout, but I'm not gonna get ahead of the secretary.
Thank you, ma'am.
Yes.
Me or
No, go ahead.
I want to ask Charlie's question a little bit differently and
I was
broaden it out.
definitely pointing to this gentleman over here in the blue blazer. Noah, we'll come back to you. Go ahead. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Sorry, Noah, I'll come back to you.
Sorry, I just mistook.
Also on deterrence forces, so same topic. Has the force posture changed for those forces that have been moved in the region in light of the ceasefire negotiations ongoing? And just broader, does the administration see the Doha negotiation as an opportunity to avoid a broader conflict in the region?
I think certainly the negotiations to reach a ceasefire deal would de-escalate tensions and would avoid or has the potential to avoid a larger regional conflict. But it's also really important to remember that it's not just that. It's about getting our hostages home. They're still Americans that are hostages. It's also about ensuring that aid can get into the people, the Palestinian people who desperately need it in Gaza. So there's a lot of components to the ceasefire talk and the framework that has been put together, but that's something that, for more details on that, I would refer to the State Department to speak to that, and the NSC as well.
But has the force posture changed for those deterrence forces in light of those negotiations?
You mean like heightened? We don't typically talk about that, so I'd refer you to CENTCOM for any further details. Noah.
Glad I'm not wearing a blue blazer today. Do you have any updates on any new U.S. assets that have reached the CENTCOM AOR in recent days? Just to broaden Charlie's question out a bit.
I think CENTCOM put out a statement when the F-22s had come in, but beyond that, not to my knowledge.
Mm-hmm. And then to follow up on the Ukraine's objectives note that you said we're still looking for a bit, is there a reason that Minister Umerov wasn't able to offer further clarity on that? I'm just wondering why there needs to be more exploration after the call.
Yeah, thanks for the question, Noah. Look, I'm just not going to get into more specifics or details of the call. We've asked, for more from the Ukrainians. I'm just going to leave it at that. Jared.
Hi, Sabrina. Iranian press is reporting, state-run press is reporting that an IRGC official has died. He had been deployed to Syria, and his injuries had resulted from a strike, I believe, between July and August. Not a lot of clarity there, but the Iranian press is saying that it was done by coalition forces who are illegally in Syria. Did the United States conduct a strike? Does the department believe they may have killed an Iranian IRGC official?
Jared, I haven't seen these reports from Iranian state-owned media, so I can't confirm them. I'd refer you to CENTCOM for any details on any strikes. Yes.
Thank you very much, Sabrina. Mr. James Bond Stockdale was a US PAW in Vietnam for a long time, and he was honored Medal of Honor as well. He was my teacher at age 15, and then since 25 years, I've been a journalist from Afghanistan, Pakistan, that border region. I'm the only English newspaper there. Can you explain to your State Department colleague that journalists who have worked in these terrorist zone areas and who were the first media providers to the US bases over there, they at least treat them with respect? Both Vedant and Matt, since last 1 year, because of some policy difference, they treat me with so much respect. And this podium, you guys have treated me with so much respect. So is it possible that you at least tell them that journalists who are from the war zone areas, they act, their attitude, their everything is a little different than these diplomatic trained journalists, you know what I mean?
So, look, they're my dear colleagues at the State Department. I'm not exactly sure what you're referring to here, but go ahead.
Please, you were going to say something.
I can tell you that, this administration, I think, certainly values journalists wherever you are in the world. We value your coverage. We value the questions that you ask us here at the briefing room, whether it's in this briefing room or other briefing rooms across the administration. And I don't know if you have a question, but happy to take it.
Yesterday, the Taliban were celebrating their 3 years anniversary of their takeover in Afghanistan. And they were flying US-made helicopters. They were driving US vehicles, the military vehicles. I had emailed this office, Pentagon, right before the US withdrawal as well, that what's going to happen. So at least, can the US now at least disable these helicopters, these big things, or no, they have not thought about it?
So this isn't like
the military hardware
that
they were displaying yesterday at the Bagram Air Base.
Okay. So, look, I don't have a comment on the types of parades that, the Taliban is doing right now. But, as the department, as we come up on, closer to an anniversary, I would say that we are certainly grateful for all those that have served, for their bravery, for their selflessness, from their for their compassion every single day that they showed while they were in Afghanistan. And we certainly honor those that came back and those that made the ultimate sacrifice, but I just don't have a comment to offer on the Taliban.
Thank you. Just last question. Several senior Pakistani military officials has been arrested in the last couple of days, including a spy master, the general, and they were arrested on corruption charges. Senior politicians, Javed Hashmi, and Georgetown graduates, again a senior politician, Mushahid Hussain, they all complain from the U.S. that the U.S. only contacts the Pakistani military more directly instead of the people-to-people relationship instead of the diplomatic. Do you guys ever feel that? Have anybody ever told you that the people of Pakistan, who many of them support democracy as well, but when their senior politicians say that the U.S. military keeps more focus on the Pakistani military than the diplomatic relations, is that anything of concern to you or not?
So I think two separate questions here. In terms of the reports that you're cited, where are those reports regarding the arrests? I just don't have anything for you on that. That's really a Pakistani internal matter for them to speak to. As you know, the U.S. values our partnership with Pakistan and engage with both military and civilian leaders based on mutual interests. And we remain committed to working with Pakistan to support regional stability and our mutual goals, and I'll just have to leave it at that. Konstantin.
Thanks. Just a quick update on JLOTs, if you don't mind. Has the remaining aid that was in Cyprus been finally delivered, and are there any JLOTs components or personnel still in the region?
Hang on, I have an update. Give me a sec. Okay, it's not working, so we're just gonna wing it. No, just kidding. Okay, so in terms of JLOTs, there is approximately, I got it, hold on. There's approximately 6 million pounds of aid left on the Cape Trinity. That has not been fully distributed into Gaza yet. We're still working that through. In terms of redeployment, and this is what I wanted to make sure that I had for you. 235 soldiers returned to Joint Base Langley Eustis earlier this month. 209 sailors returned to Naval Air Station North Island last week. And an additional approximately 100 will be returning in the coming days. We expect all personnel and equipment to be coming home by mid-September. As soon as that aid is distributed, and as you know, we are committed to making sure that that aid does get distributed into the people of Gaza, but that is still ongoing.
Thank you.
Okay, yes, in the back.
Thank you, Sabrina. Two questions. First one, do you have any new information about the possible of Iranian attack? I mean, if they move some of their assets to prepare for that attack? Because we heard that last days that we don't have anything about that. So do you have any new information about that?
Yeah, I don't have anything to provide. We certainly wouldn't get into intel assessments. We remain postured, of course, to protect our forces and to come to the self-defense of Israel. But I just don't have anything to share on any type of attack. And as I read out in the top, it's something that I know there's keen interest in. We're going to continue to monitor what's going on in the region, but I just don't have more to share or a crystal ball to predict the who, what, when, where, and how right now.
My second question, do you still haven't seen any signs that Hezbollah wants to start a new war? And do you expect that they would observe a 6-week ceasefire, let's say if the deal will done in Doha and the Houthis too?
Well, look, I think a ceasefire deal is good for everyone. That's something that the president has been pushing, and you saw him outline that earlier this year, some of the framework component pieces. Those talks are ongoing. It's an important step to securing the release of hostages, some of which are American citizens. We want to see them come home. We do think a ceasefire would certainly de-escalate tensions in the region, and that's ultimately what we want to see. Mike, did you have a question? Sure.
The Ukraine's cross-border operation into the Kursk region was the most significant mission really since the start of the war. This was apparently done without the knowledge of their largest patron, the United States. Now, why shouldn't that be considered an intelligence failure on the part of this administration, this building, and the rest of the IC?
Well, Mike, I'd push back on that a bit. I think some of the things that the Ukrainians demonstrated earlier on in the war is the ability to hold Kiev, and then subsequently Kharkiv, Kherson. They were able to hold major cities that I think back then you were here in this briefing room as well, and speculating on what the Ukrainians would and wouldn't be able to hold. In terms of, is this an intelligence failure? No.
The United States did not know that this happened until
we were
after
not.
the fact.
Yep, we were not made aware of this operation. That doesn't mean that it's an intelligence failure. What I would tell you is that we are working with the Ukrainians to better understand their objectives, and I'm not going to go beyond what we had in that readout.
They didn't let anyone in the administration know. Does that indicate that there's a lack of trust between Kiev and Washington?
No, I don't think so, Mike. I would actually push back on that. We have a very good relationship with our Ukrainian counterparts. The secretary, on an almost weekly basis, is speaking to his Ukrainian counterpart, and it's not just the secretary; it's the Secretary of State. It's other administration officials across this administration, including the president. There is deep trust there, and there has to be deep trust. We're on our 62nd presidential drawdown package. We are pouring millions upon billions of dollars into Ukraine to make sure that they have what they need on the battlefield. We are assisting them with their capabilities. We're training their pilots. We're training their infantry to be better, to improve their skills. There's absolutely trust there. As we said, we didn't know about this one operation. That doesn't mean that we're not engaged on other things. And I'm just going to leave it at that. Oh, boy. Dan, and I'll take two more, and then that's it.
To the Middle East, are there indications of an increased threat from the Iranian-backed militias in Iraq and Syria in recent days? Is there any kind of change in the posture of those adversaries? And then also, given the threat that's kind of continuous to those U.S. forces in Syria and Iraq that you were talking about earlier, what is the rationale for keeping U.S. troops in Syria, for example, if ISIS is severely degraded and mostly defeated?
So on your first question, so I'm not going to speak to any force posture changes. I'm not aware of any heightened levels in the recent days, but I'd refer you to CENTCOM. In terms of the rationale of keeping forces within Syria and Iraq, we are there to ensure the defeat of ISIS. That by no means that ISIS has completely evaporated. They still remain a threat. You might remember from this podium just a few weeks ago, I was asked about a concert that was canceled because of an ISIS threat. So ISIS remains a very real threat in the region and around the world. Were they the threat that they were 2014, 2016, when our forces were at the height of engaging them and they were outside of Baghdad? No, that threat has evolved, and they have changed their tactics and methods and become degraded because of the global coalition that we've built. But ISIS still remains a threat, and I don't think we're turning a blind eye to that in any way. Okay, two more. One, and then Charlie gets the last one.
Colleague's question about ISIS. So President Biden repeatedly said that Over the Horizon is an effective program to monitor or to control what's going on in the region like Pakistan and Afghanistan. What is the Pentagon's assessment on that? Is that effective? How does it work? And also, does the United States still control Afghanistan's airspace? Because the Taliban's defense ministry said a couple of days ago that we, the Taliban, don't have any control on our airspace in Afghanistan. And they claim that some drones are flying over different cities of Afghanistan like Kandahar, Jalalabad, and some other areas. Who controls that? The Pentagon?
Well, that seems like a them problem, not an us problem. In terms of are over the horizon capabilities effective? Yes, they are. Charlie.
Yes. Thank you, Sabrina. I'm just curious, going back to Ukraine and Russia. I know the United States has cautioned Ukrainians of using certain weapons that might penetrate deep inside Russia. Now that the line of scrimmage has moved forward, are there restrictions on what kind of weapons can be used on Russian soil?
Thanks, Charlie, for the question. Nothing has changed in terms of our policy. So the policy that we set out from the beginning and allowing those counterfire measures to take place around that Sumy area, nothing's changed on that. Nothing has changed on our long-range, fires policy as well. We still believe that with the coalition that we've built through the UDCG, that we are providing the Ukrainians what they need on the battlefield to be successful in that northeast area region and in the south. And we believe that they have the capabilities to be successful with what we've given them.
But the U.S. policy was never considering that weapons like these might be used inside Russia.
So Charlie, what I would tell you on that is, once again, on the Kursk incursion, we're still working to get more from the Ukrainians on their objectives. So I don't have more to share on that. In terms of like what you were saying on, like, we've never seen this, you have to remember that, and to Tara's question at the beginning of the war, what we were providing were like javelins and stingers. What we're providing them today looks very, very different from that PDAs 1 through 20 possibly. So you have to remember that every time that the battlefield has changed and adapted, whether it be terrain or capabilities, we have adapted as well. So we're not ruling anything out right now, but if the as the battlefield dynamics change, we always reserve the right to work with the Ukrainians on what they need. And right now you're seeing them, they have these F-16s that are there. They've showcased that. That was a capability that was not something that they needed at the very beginning of the war. But now they need that. So I'm going to leave it at that. I will take one more question and then we're wrapping.
Sabrina, in the past 3 years, U.S. forces have pulled out of Afghanistan. The Taliban's taken over. Putin launched a major invasion of Ukraine. Iran carried out a major attack on Israel. There was the October 7th massacre. U.S. Navy's been engaged for months in a war in Yemen against the Houthis. U.S. forces have pulled out of bases in Africa. Has the Pentagon lost the ability to deter?
No, I would actually say quite the opposite. You mentioned many examples there, but what I would tell you is the United States is not in a long, protracted war. What you're seeing the United States do, whether it be in the Red Sea and the BAM, we're protecting commercial shipping. What you're seeing us do in the Eastern Mediterranean and the Central Command area of responsibility is we're protecting our forces and we're coming to the self-defense of Israel. So happy to have a longer conversation about this, but our goal right there, I think you have to separate defeat versus what our intentions are. And our intentions are to allow commercial shipping, to allow let me just take this one, Lucas, and finish this up. We have to continue to allow commercial shipping through that Red Sea passage. It's important. It's something that the president set out from the very beginning, and the secretary built a coalition through Operation Prosperity Guardian of like-minded nations coming together to protect interests from all over the world sailing through that corridor. So we remain committed to that objective, and I'm just going to leave it at that. Thank you, Lucas. Much appreciated.